Between April and July 2025, a staggering 117 girls aged between 10 and 14 gave birth in Eastern Cape public hospitals, as well as 4,752 teenagers aged between 15 and 19 in areas such as OR Tambo, Buffalo City and Nelson Mandela Bay. These figures point to a deeply disturbing reality of childhoods being stolen, widespread vulnerability and systemic gaps in justice and support. We explore what's being done, what's failing and how communities can assist. I'm joined by Okuhle Mdodana, Director of Childline in the Eastern Cape. Okuhle, appreciate your time this afternoon. Those numbers, absolutely appalling. Can you put the figure of 117 among 10 to 14-year-olds between April and 2025 into perspective? I mean, how does this compare with past data? Is it even acceptable?
Okay, thank you, Hugo, for having me. The figure is not acceptable. However, it does indicate a rise in terms of stats, while underscoring the urgency of targeted prevention and intervention efforts. Historically, these cases would have been underreported, but the recent data suggests a rise pattern that demands urgent attention from all stakeholders involving us in the child protection sectors and in the health sector. It's totally unacceptable because this is also linked to sexual exploitation and lack of access of comprehensive sexual and reproductive health education amongst young girls.
Now, I'm at an absolute loss when you talk about these numbers. Obviously, we talk about 10-year-olds giving birth, meaning that these rapes, if you will, these statutory rapes, sort of occurred when some of these girls were just 9 years old. What does it say about the scale of child sexual exploitation in the Eastern Cape?
This data actually points out a significant scale of sexual exploitation. It's often caused by hidden that critically is very impactful amongst young girls. However, the pregnancies amongst these very young girls suggest that they are being sexually exploited, and they are being abused. It reflects a systematic vulnerability, which includes inadequate protective measures, such as social norms, stigma. They are being stigmatized when they report or they disclose about this occurrence. There's also a gap in the law enforcement sector. So it also underscores the importance of strengthening protective measures and increasing awareness to prevent exploitation of these young girls.
Are socioeconomic issues a factor in all of this? I mean, what I'm asking is, are these young girls members of the more marginalized communities in our society, or is it across the board?
It's absolutely amongst the underprivileged children who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, because it's also a socioeconomic factor where it's among poverty-stricken areas. You'd find that most of these girls are being admitted in public facilities. They have no access to private medical health. They have limited or lack of access in comprehensive sexual education. So it also has an impact of poverty, where some of these people are actually linked, the abusers are all, the perpetrators, if I may put it that way, they are also people that are coming from families of these young girls, and they don't get to be reported because they are avoiding the disruptive family structures, or they don't want to report the perpetrators, which then enables the perpetrators to abuse these young girls often.
So we're going to come back in a moment, Okuhle, and talk about the perpetrators. But how can a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old or any of these young girls protect themselves?
These young girls, they can protect themselves by reporting this abuse. Childline is one of the organizations that advocates against violation of children's rights and unwanted pregnancies at their age. They can report the abuse anonymously Their identity will be kept private and confidential, and they will get the assistance that they need. And also through Childline, in our services that we render as an organization, we provide psychosocial support to families of these young girls and the young girls as well. Trauma counseling, it will be addressed in our trauma counseling rooms, whereby they will be advised on ways how to protect themselves moving more forward.
So,
thank you.
Give us some insights into the conversation that you're having with the parents or guardians of these young girls. So you've brought them in, you've given them the necessary support. I'd imagine you're having a conversation with the custodians of these young girls.
Yes. The conversations that we have, however, there's always a barrier when we bring in parents to come into consultations, because it's also you would find out that there's also an economic dependency on those perpetrators. So they sometimes withdraw the cases and discriminate and threaten the young girls if they speak more about the abuse. And sometimes you'd find that they also protecting the reputation of the girls, and due to intimidation by the perpetrators themselves. So there are those issues that actually emanate from that. And as a result of that, the parents can actually withdraw the cases whilst in the process of trying to assist the young girls. So we get a lot of those challenges. However, we do advise them that it's very important for them to report if they know about the abuse and the child has disclosed that the parents know about the abuse. They can also be prosecuted as parents. So we always advise them on the pros and cons of reporting the abuse and not reporting the abuse.
So what does the law actually say, Okuhle, around statutory rape of these very, very young girls? Surely some protection should exist whether or not the parent is pressing charges.
Yes. Enforcement effectiveness varies in these cases, and it always remains a challenge. While the law provides a critical framework, many of these cases do not really lead to prosecution due to factors that I've mentioned in previously, like familial pressure, where they don't report because they fear secondary victimization from the perpetrator, and the perpetrator could be linked into the family or is a family member. As also social stigma and lack of evidence also plays a role in the enforcement issues or legal issues pertaining reporting and statutory offenses of these cases, because it always states that one needs to go under prosecution. One cannot be arrested based on hearsay. So there's also a tendency of cases to collapse when families withdraw such charges due to fear, shame, or community pressure. So it's important that we strengthen the legal process, and community awareness and raise awareness in communities is very vital to improve the enforcement outcomes in such cases.
Okuhle, final two thoughts, if you will. One speaks to the perpetrators in this instance. What is the incidence of these individuals being locked up for a very long time in the cases that you've come across? And the second and final question is, what sort of life are these young girls living after giving birth at 10, 11 or 12 years of age?
Okay. On that part, Hugo, there's an issue when it comes to ensuring that the perpetrators are being locked up for a very long time, because I've mentioned that there would be withdrawals of these cases, because could be that some of the perpetrators or most of the perpetrators are linked to the family or are family members, and they are breadwinners within the family. So it actually perpetuates them to continue abusing the children. And we also need to look at the fact that once a child starts to be sexually abused at a very young age, their hormones are very active. So, and they are supposed to be playing, and they're being deprived their right to play, or responsibility to play and right to play with other kids. So it also affects them, because now they would get sexually active, because once they those hormones are activated, they would become very sexually active, and they use the energy that they have sexually now. So in most cases, you'd find that perpetrators would say that, but they have raped initially, but now the child is the one that is initiating the offense without really knowing as to what is it that they're doing. So in such cases, it becomes very difficult, as I've mentioned. So it needs us to actually strengthen the process whereby we try to protect these children by all means possible.
Okuhle, appreciate your time. Okuhle Mdodana, Director of Childline in the Eastern Cape. A real tearjerker, this conversation, where we speak of 117 girls aged 10 to 14 having given birth between April last year and July 2025, some as young as 10 years of age, and many of those perpetrators walking away scot-free because of cases of intimidation.